Welcome to Lawyers Without Billboards, where we break down family law and other areas of the law. No gimmicks, no legal jargon, just real, unfiltered talk from real lawyers. Join your hosts, Steve, Patty, Jimmy, and Alexa, partners at Shewmaker Lewis, a law firm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Every episode, they tackle the legal questions that matter most: divorce, custody, child support, alimony, and everything in between. They'll pull back the curtain to give you real insights on what happens inside the courtroom and beyond.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Lawyers Without Billboards, brought to you by Shewmaker Lewis of Atlanta, Georgia, and put together by Rob Bergner and Bleeding Edge Productions. So here I am with my partners, Jimmy and Alexa Lewis, and my wonderful wife, Patty. But before we get started on today's topic, which is TPOs and civil orders of protection, the joke of the day.
Can't wait.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm the
When does a joke become a dad joke?
When you tell it.
When it's fully grown. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, no. That was terrible.
I'm not going to quit my day job. I'll tell you.
Please don't.
Hey, everybody. We're here today to talk about
It was so bad.
civil orders of protection. In Georgia, they're referred to as temporary protective orders, TPO for short. Some states call them CPOs, civil orders of protection, and
Civil protective orders.
CPOs, whatever. And they have different names for them, but they're all generally the same idea. Although the law may vary from state to state, but today we're going to talk about the law in the state of Georgia, the Peach State, right here where we are. TPOs. You guys ready to talk about TPOs?
Yeah, let's do it. Right.
Okay, what's a TPO? In general, basic terms, layman's terms, what's a TPO, Alexa?
It's a protective order that essentially is a civil court order that says one individual is prevented from having contact with, whether indirect or direct, engaging with, going to their home, going to their job, having any kind of interaction with another individual.
That's right.
Essentially, leave them the hell alone.
That's right. In Georgia, we have a statute, a law called Official Code of Georgia 19-13-1, 2, 3, and 4. That section.
It's Title 19, Chapter 13.
Yes, thank you very much. Check out the big brain on Patty. And that's the section of the law that deals with TPOs.
Thank you, table of contents.
Family violence protective orders. So as I tell people when they call me, because we get lots of calls on TPOs.
We do.
First of all, to get a TPO, you have to prove two things to a judge. Before we talk about those two things, to what judge are we going to see?
A magistrate judge.
It's Superior Court judge. It's actually Superior Court has
just been a lot of times it's
heard by a magistrate.
Yeah,
Way to go, Alexa, get the wrong answer, but then back your way into the right answer.
Except it wasn't the right
Dig that
answer.
about Alexa.
Okay.
well, like, for example, in this
Cobb
county.
County, it's a magistrate judge.
It's sitting by designation by the Superior
in
Court.
this county, you're going to get a TPO. You're going to Gwinnett County Jail, and you will be heard by a magistrate judge. Yes,
Who is
it's sitting by designation
sitting
by the Superior Court.
The TPO process. You know, I'll bet it was sorry to be your teacher in high school, law school, college, because you were always going back and arguing those questions. But
My daddy said I should be a lawyer.
I dig that about you, Alexa. But here's the bottom line.
that's-
The same court that has jurisdiction over divorce in
Yes.
Georgia, the Superior Court, has jurisdiction over TPOs. And it ought to be that way. But Alexa is right. In practical terms, Superior Court judges see such a volume of these that they can't wait to pass these off on the lowly appointed magistrate judges. They will give these to the magistrate judges. Yep. And I'll just give a shout out to the most hardworking magistrate judges that any of us ever know. Who am I thinking of?
Alexander Manning.
Alex Manning.
Hero of the week.
Hero of the week, who keeps Fulton County running. She and a couple others, but she's been doing it a long time.
Yep.
And they keep it running because Fulton County TPO court is very much like the Jerry Springer Show.
It's an entertaining place to be.
In fact, if you're ever bored, just truck on down to courtroom 8G in the Fulton County Courthouse on any given day, and it is worth your time. But the point is that that's where the TPOs will go. And it's a petition. It's a request seeking relief. Now, what I tell people when they call me, this is the question I asked before and I cut you all off. People call me and they say they want a TPO. I say, you got to prove two things to get a TPO. What are those two things?
First, a relationship.
Yep.
First thing is a relationship. For a TPO, now we're not talking about a dating order or a trespassing order, which we'll touch on later. For a TPO, for a family violence protective order, you have to prove up that there is an intimate relationship. And intimate does not mean necessarily sexual. In fact, a lot of intimate relationships are not sexual. What are examples of intimate relationships that we have to prove?
Married parties.
Married parties?
Co-parents or parents of the same children.
Yes.
And
who live together.
Yeah, it could be a parent.
Yeah.
It could be a parent-child.
It could be college roommates. It could be Jimmy and Bubba who live together in a dorm room, right? It could be Jimmy and Alexa who lived together and broke up.
Right, because it could be that they lived together previously, or they were previously married, or previously in a relationship.
It could be Jimmy's son, Bubba, trying to get a TPO against Jimmy, correct? So you have to prove the intimate relationship. It can't just be anybody. That's a different type of order. If Jimmy and I were never roommates and never married and we just know each other and I want to get an order, that's different. But TPO, first thing is the intimate relationship. And then what's the other thing?
Active family.
The act of, yeah.
Why'd you throw that at me?
It's an active family.
An act of family violence. You threw something at me. Jimmy just threw a highlighter at me.
But you have the intimate relationship.
He
so no
illuminated me with a
TPO.
highlighter. God, that was bad. That was my worst joke of the episode.
No.
This is like
First was the
far.
worst.
This is replete with dad jokes in this episode.
So, as I was saying, what are...
Maybe we should talk about the bacon tree.
No, not yet. What?
So like the giving tree.
It'll come.
What are... No, what? Don't give away the punchline of the joke.
I want to.
What are examples of acts of family violence to get a TPO?
Throwing highlighter.
Okay, battery,
Assault, battery.
assault, simple assault,
Damage to property.
damage to property, trespass.
Yeah.
Right? What else? We're missing a big one, guys.
Any other?
No, you're missing a bigger one. Think bigger. Any
Felony. That's what I was saying.
felony.
Any other? Yes.
Yes, any felony.
Yes.
So as I say to people who call me and they want a TPO, I'm like, okay, we have to prove the intimate relationship. And the person says, well, I'm married to so-and-so. Stop.
Oh,
You prove
great.
that.
Yep.
Now, the next thing you have to prove is I have a certain class of enumerated specific misdemeanors, assault, battery, trespass, or any felony. Now, any felony is different.
Kind of broad.
It's kind of broad. I've seen TPOs that came part and parcel with an allegation of child molestation, because that's certainly a felony, child molestation in Georgia.
Is it not a felony other places?
I'm not here to tell you today to talk about Arkansas. I mean, no way.
can't imagine what
Didn't you date a cheerleader from Arkansas one time? You didn't? You don't want to admit it. Okay. But other common
Alexa didn't know
felonies
about it.
that come up in the context of TPOs is illegal surveillance. I mean, that's a big one, actually.
Yeah.
Computer surveillance, electronic surveillance, so things about. So you any felony.
I actually had a case where parties were going through a divorce, and the wife moved out of the bedroom and into the guest bedroom, and the husband put cameras in the vents,
Right.
watching her undress.
So creepy.
It is so creepy.
But think about the typical case where DFAX gets a call. A child makes an outcry at school. Mandatory reporter reports it. DFAX is investigating an allegation of child molestation. Now, in criminal court, that must be proved by the highest standard in the law, beyond reasonable doubt. But a civil order of protection is a preponderance standard.
Right, because it's civil.
lower standard.
Because it's civil. It's not criminal.
Right, it's a lower standard. So it's not uncommon for a mother to file for a divorce and a TPO and say DFAX is investigating allegations of child molestation, which I believe are true.
Yep.
And there would be any felony. Okay. So it's not always going to be I slapped you or punched you or scratched you. Okay. But most of the time.
Yeah, more common. Yeah.
Yes, these are more common.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the basis. Now, what is the defense to I'm seeking a TPO on behalf of my 10-year-old? He hit my 10-year-old. What's a great defense that we can all think of?
No, corporal punishment.
Reasonable parental discipline, right? And there's actually a case on point. I actually took the time to write it down.
But did you read it?
Hey, now, come on. Hey, you got to walk before you can run. Bushite versus Stinson. That's not Bonnie Stinson, our associate. Shout out to Bonnie. I don't think it is it? I hadn't read the case. I let it go. No. I actually have had a jury trial over reasonable parental discipline.
Yeah.
So, and we got an acquittal on that one. So, yes, reasonable parental discipline is a defense to I struck the child or I made the child think I was going to strike the child, depending on the nature of the facts.
Yeah, but let's also, point out that I don't think that there's such a thing as reasonable spousal discipline.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No,
there's not.
no.
That's more of a
Right. Now,
BDSM.
Okay, maybe.
now let's hit something.
problem.
Let's hit something on TPOs that is dead on important, because you have all gotten calls for TPOs. He hit me, and I'm like, okay, ma'am, when did he hit you? He hit me back in 1979. Okay, so here's my question: is there a time limit on an act that would qualify for a TPO? Is there a time limit?
There is not.
Technically, no.
Technically, no.
Okay.
But
there's
also...
There's a practicality piece of this, right?
Yes.
Because part of the TPO is there was an act of family violence, and it's likely to occur again.
Right. You have a reasonable suspicion it will.
Right.
Right. And the great example, people always want to appeal stuff. I got a case I didn't like, I want to appeal it. Like an appeal is going to suddenly wipe the slate clean, that's a whole separate.
And then they
podcast.
usually don't have a transcript anyway, so it doesn't matter.
But one of the times when you can usually get at least a reversal or a rehearing is when the judge at the trial level blatantly makes a misstatement of the law. There's a case out there, Lewis versus Lewis. Where the judge said the act of domestic violence is too remote in time.
Offended.
Yeah, right. Whatever.
Oh no, I see that. I see that.
Just because my nickname was
Alexa, there is no such thing as reasonable spousal discipline.
More believable that way.
Unless it's the woman doing it to the man. Now I'm going to get a lot of blowback on that, but I'll live with it. So the bottom line is, if a judge says it's too remote in time, that's an error of law. Legally, no. Can't. Now, a smart judge isn't going to say that out loud. A smart judge is just going to sit there for 2 hours and listen to your bullshit case and then go TPO denied. But the point, and there's an old rule of thumb when I first started that I picked up from older attorneys. It's not written in the law, but I've told many people this many times. If you have an act of domestic violence that's within, say, 3 to 5 days, you're getting my attention.
Sure.
If you come in with something a month or 2 months or 3 months or a year ago, we got to ask why. And what was life like between then and now? Were you having sex? Were you living in the same house?
Right.
Did you go on vacations together? Because if they show a picture of everybody at Disney World, but you're like, he hit me 2 months before that, and then 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, I filed for divorce. Oh, so you're just trying to leverage a TPO and a divorce, which could be a topic for a whole different podcast.
Yeah, that's a whole can of worms.
Shady lawyering and stuff. But the bottom line is there is no legal requirement for a recent act, but there's a practicality standard, right?
Yeah, it's common sense, right? Like, you can file it, but should you?
Right. Okay. That's absolutely true. Now, regarding TPOs, when do they have to be filed? Anybody?
When?
When do they have to be filed?
During business hours?
When the clerk's office is open.
It was a trick question.
Yeah, it's kind of a trick question.
Bullshit question, Steve.
Everything that guy just said was
All of it that guy just says.
okay. That's a bullshit question. All right. My cousin Vinny never gets old here.
No, it really doesn't.
Here's bottom line. How do you get a TPO? Start the process for me. You're explaining this to a client. How do you get it?
So usually you're going to go to the clerk's office.
Who's you?
The individual.
The client,
The
the
person
party.
is petitioning for the protective order. And they fill out the paperwork, and then they speak with a judge, and then the judge will either deny or grant them an ex parte order. So an order with nobody else there. The other side hasn't had a chance to say yay or nay on what happened. Then it has to be served on the other party.
Right.
And then there has to be a full-blown evidentiary hearing within 30 days.
Well, let's focus on that first application.
Yeah.
Who's hearing that application?
It's usually the presiding judge.
Always?
Not always.
If you, okay, well, wait a minute. You don't know that for a fact, and you don't know that for a fact, and you don't know that for a fact. Why not?
Because we're not there.
That's what I'm getting.
We don't go.
We don't go. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes for a scared person. Yeah. He hit me, and then I'm on the phone telling him, okay, you have to go to the court by yourself. I can't go with you. They won't let me in the room.
Right.
Have you even ever tried to go to court?
I've gone, actually.
Yeah, and I had to sit outside.
You've had to sit outside. How far did you get, Alexa?
In front of a judge.
You were there in front of the judge? Where was that?
Gwinnett County.
I'm surprised you got that.
It was 2000.
Maybe they didn't know she was an attorney.
17?
Maybe they didn't realize you were an
Did
attorney.
you do that Valley Girl thing where you threw your hair and you're like, okay, did you do that?
Which I might have.
Okay, Jimmy, have you ever gotten that far?
No.
No.
He doesn't have the hair. He can't.
I've never tried.
Right.
No, I never tried.
I don't even bother.
there's no point.
No, because I don't think I've ever even told a client or potential client, no, I'll be there with you for that. That it's just, no, here's what you need to do. This is the first step.
Yeah.
And more likely than not, no judge is going to want to hear from me anyway. They want to hear from you and you alone. And frankly, from an optics standpoint, it'll look better if you're going there without counsel.
Now, frequently, I will either sit in person or sometimes over the phone or Zoom, and I'll explain to them, you have to get the judge's attention. So let's talk about what you're going to say, what you're going to wear, what's your evidence, how you going to explain it.
Where? That's on the judge, right?
Well, that depends.
I know. I'm like, you get the judge's attention.
Hello. I'm talking to potential client. I'm like, oh, hey, wait a second. Hey, baby, what you wearing? No. I'm explaining.
Well, it did sound that way.
That's not the way I meant it to say. That's not what I said.
That's not what I said.
What I'm saying is, I will say to them, you need to dress a certain way, whether you're man or woman. You just
appropriately.
Appropriately. Tell me about the evidence you have. Do you have recordings? Do you have photos? Let me see them or describe them to me. What are you going to say? And I'll walk them through things. And that's a good use of the time as an attorney.
Yep.
And then they're invested. They got to go do it and get the what's called an ex parte. What is an ex parte order? What does that mean, Jimmy? Ex parte.
Only one side.
Okay. Because they're not inviting the abuser to come down to court with them, right? So the court's making a decision without hearing the other side. How can that be legal? Constitutional.
Very short period of time.
Right. The law makes some decisions in the absence of the other side being told in a couple of different cases in family law court. And, if you're on the receiving end of that, you think it's extremely unfair. But the answer we have to give people is that's allowable because it's for a short period of time.
Yep.
Now, it can still have lifelong consequences.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it's bullshit. But that's the legal answer I have to give. I'm thinking about TPOs, temporary hearings, things like that. But
and really, when you look at the purpose of a TPO, I mean, it's really supposed to be in exigent circumstances where you're trying to protect one party from the other. And I do know that there are cases out there where the process does get abused. But if you look at the purpose of the TPO, it makes sense because it's something. It's an immediate. It's an emergent situation that the court needs to act immediately.
And it's essentially, so the law is reactive, right? So it's the most proactive thing we can kind of do because the law is reactive. It's got to be after something has happened, but as proactive as we can be before something happens again. Because in theory, it's...
Or something worse happens.
When the court's your client calls you and goes, hey, I did everything you said. It worked out. I'm good. How soon does the court have to schedule that other hearing, the second hearing?
Within 30 days.
Right. Now, there's been some exceptions when there were judicial emergencies and flooded courthouses in Atlanta and whatnot, but 30 days. So what happens at that hearing 30 days later? Well, I'm sorry, before we get there, somebody's getting some bad news that day. Yeah. They're getting a sheriff showing up with an order that says, dude, you got to get out of the house, grab your toothbrush, let's go.
Yeah, pack your overnight bag.
And you can't go back, right? And how long does that poor soul who's, suddenly very surprised, how long is he out of the house?
Until further order of the court.
Okay. So he's going to court within 30 days, and that really protects him. Within 30 days, we're going to be back in here, right?
Yep.
And what happens at that hearing? Anybody?
Then you have your full evidentiary hearing as to the allegations made by the petitioning party.
And lawyers can be there for both sides, right?
Yep.
And this is trial style. We're doing opening statements, examining witnesses, all that stuff. It's fair game, right? And at the end of that, we're going to get an order, right? And the order could be, I'm going to have a TPO for 12 months, sometimes for 6.
Sometimes 9, sometimes 3. Depends on the judge.
That's right. And...
Or it's denied.
I was just going to say that, or it's denied. It's not. And we're sitting here, we're all experienced. We've all had cases where we've had TPOs granted in our favor and against us. We've had TPOs we tried to get that failed. And we've defended people that didn't win, and we've defended people who did win, all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of domestic attorneys don't like to do TPOs, do they?
No.
Why is that? Because it's too much like criminal law.
It's too much like criminal law, but it's not though. Like,
no,
the procedure is the same as if you're trying any kind of domestic case. To me, I don't get it, except for the fact that yes, there's some quasi-criminal ramifications.
Yeah.
And I think that's intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that end, I mean, the judge really has a lot of discretion in whether or not to grant the TPO. And I've had cases where I really think that the TPO should not have been granted, and the judge grants it.
Same.
Erring on the side of caution.
Yep.
Right.
And a lot of judges will do that. They'll err on the side of caution. Because every judge has that story where they says, look, if I don't grant it, then something. Yeah. And you talk to a lot of judges who've been on the bench a long time, and they all have that story.
Yeah. And I find it to fall in different camps. You have the cohabitating couple, could be married or not, and the judge is like, well, I hear about an act of violence. I'm going to look at it closely and decide. And also, is this being done for purposes of posturing for a divorce that's already filed?
Or some other case, right?
That's one group of cases. The other group of cases is people that no longer live together. And that's really tough because, the judge is like, all right, you guys don't need to be around each other. So why don't I grant this TPO? Because there's no reason to be around each other anyway. There's no kids you're sharing. You're not living together. So why the hell wouldn't I do it?
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not, just for a judge just to be like, hey, why not grant it? Because you guys don't live together.
I would take issue with the judge saying that out loud, but what I would pose to you is that I bet a lot of judges think that way.
Sure, right.
Now, the problem in the mix, and it really comes down to, this America is very much a gun culture. And what happens if you have a TPO granted against you?
You can't have guns or ammo.
Right. And, if you like to go skeet shooting or go hunting once or twice a year, I'm not that worried about you. I mean, I get it. But what if you have to carry a gun because it's part of your job?
You're not going to.
Law enforcement.
Yeah. So what do you get when you get a judge that might be inclined to grant this TPO, but part of the mix is the person I'm going to grant this against is a cop or is in the military? Then what?
You settle that shit.
Well,
without a protective order in place.
Why don't you explain that to us?
So usually,
sometimes,
a lot of times, we've got the companion case of the divorce, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, in lieu of entering into a protective order, we can negotiate a temporary order in the divorce case that has
the stay away language,
all the stuff that says leave each other the hell alone, don't go back to the house, etc. Here's what your parameters are. But it's a temporary order in the divorce, and we agree to dismiss the temporary protective order, which doesn't have the ramifications of a TPO. So that's the way to handle it if you can.
Yeah, and you can also, there's kind of a loophole that some counties don't allow. I don't think, but some do. I know Fulton loves them and is okay. Is basically
keep the peace orders.
Yeah, it's a mutual.
I've heard some counties out there won't even do it, but it's very much alive in Fulton County. And before we go too far, what are some of the things that you can get? You're going to court. Somebody calls you and says, Alexa, I want you for my TPO because I heard you're badass. And you go into court and you win. What are some of the things you can ask the judge to do in a TPO?
You can ask for certain bills to be paid or continue to be paid. Yeah. You can ask for possession of the home, possession of vehicles, custody. Yeah. You can seek child support. You can seek alimony. You can seek attorney's fees in protective order cases.
You can seek certain kinds of evaluations. Mental health evaluations, psychological evaluations, drug evaluations.
Family violence intervention program.
Yep.
It might not surprise you guys to know that there are 11 different categories of things in the law that you can request. And you guys have hit, I think, all of them. And that's important. It is important to remember that it's more than just, I want his ass out of the house. I want him out of the house, and I want him to pay my attorney's fees. I want him out of the house. I want him to pay my attorney's fees and get a psychological evaluation, okay?
And the mortgage.
And the mortgage,
the car, and the this.
Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of pressure when that's coming down on you to, as you say, settle it out because a lot's coming down. So that's the kind of the broad scopes of the TPO, right? Now,
we probably want to save the dating violence for a whole nother podcast because we can go pretty deep on that as well.
Then why don't we hold on that? Let me ask you this then. You get a TPO granted, and it usually lasts for 6, 9, 12 months, but no more than 12 months.
Sure.
Can it be extended beyond 12 months?
Yes.
In the initial order?
No.
How about?
Have to refile.
So the most you can get in the initial is 12 months. But then when you refile, you can ask for what?
A 3-year
or a permanent.
3-year, or can you ask for a 1 year?
Yeah.
Yeah, a 1 year, a 3 year, or a permanent.
Yeah, right.
And when do you have to file for that?
Before the first one expires.
Okay. Do you have to be heard before the first one expires?
No. Right. But you have to have it filed.
But you have to have filed it. That's a very important. What happens if during the TPO, the other side violates the TPO, breaks the TPO?
As an aggravated stalking felony.
It could be. It could be contempt of the
It could be civil contempt.
Yeah.
The DA could pick it up as a felony, and we've seen both. I have to tell people. Sometimes I have to tell them when they don't win a TPO that I'm defending. Sometimes I have to tell them when they call me and they're looking for advice no contact. What does that mean? If it says no contact.
No contact.
No contact.
No contact means no contact.
No text messages. No emails.
There you go. Keep going. Because when Nice Patty says no contact,
No
means no
Instagram
contact.
messages. No Facebook messages. No WhatsApp messages.
Don't ask him.
No telling your brother to call her.
Yeah.
Right.
And be like, hey, he's really sore.
Right. As I tell people, if you have a no contact order, there's only one person who can contact that person for you. Who is that person?
Your attorney.
Me. It's incentive to hire me.
Yep.
I'm the only person who can contact that other side without you possibly getting arrested.
Yep.
Okay. That is a good rundown on TPOs. There are some nuances to TPOs, many nuances that we haven't covered, but we've covered the broad strokes. So encourage you all to call us at Shewmaker and Lewis if you have questions about TPOs. They're alive and well in Georgia, and they're very interesting. Who's our hero of the week?
Oh, we're talking about TPOs?
Yeah, Alex Manning.
Alex Manning's our hero because she handles the bulk of the TPOs in Fulton County. And it's never boring.
Never.
To watch an Alex Manning TPO
honestly,
on YouTube.
Yeah, I was gonna say during the COVID time, her YouTube channel was alive and well.
I mean, she had a guy have a heart attack on screen. She had a woman jump out of the bathtub buck-ass naked on a Zoom.
Stepped over the
I really think she needs PTSD, Social Security disability, one of these days.
Right.
She's a great lady. She's a veteran, Army veteran, former cop. I think former detective.
Just a badass.
Former lawyer. You know, she'll tell a room full of people that I'm a great lawyer, but that she kicked my ass in court.
I was there. It happened.
Well, we didn't have to go that far. But all right. Anyway, so that's a wrap for today. TPOs, Lawyers Without Billboards. Goodbye.
That's it for this episode of Lawyers Without Billboards. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more resources or to get in touch with us, visit shewmakerandlewis.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.